Now to something a little bit different, a new element of our coverage of the election campaign, something we haven't tried before. It's called The Jury, and we'll be doing this in each of the remaining weeks of the campaign. Essentially, it's a focus group of undecided voters, voters who may be leaning one way or the other, but haven't made up their minds entirely. We've been talking to people on the streets of marginal seats, yes, but this is a more structured discussion carried out by a professional focus group moderator. These are exactly the sort of sessions that the major parties rely on when they're testing their policies, their campaign lines or their advertising messages. So if you've ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes when the major parties are formulating their strategies, this will give you a very good insight. Now, we've commissioned YouGov Galaxy, a company that does a lot of this stuff, to carry out these focus group sessions for us. They've selected a group of 8 voters in the marginal Sydney seat of Reid. We're going to hear from each of them over the next few weeks. Now, this is the seat, Reid. It's currently held by the Liberal Party, Craig Launby. He won the seat at the last 2 elections, but he's leaving, as many know, at this election. The margin right now is 4.7%. As you can see, the seat lies in the, well, near the inner west of Sydney. It includes suburbs like Strathfield, Five Dock, Homebush. First, let's find out a bit about the voters who are taking part in this group.
My name is David. I live in Wentworth Point. I'm engineering by practice and I work in Parramatta. So in my family I have me and my wife and my 1-year-old daughter.
Fantastic. And you're undecided?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
There's not much, but there's a lot of information out there, but some of them seems pretty similar.
I live in Wentworth Point. I'm a primary school teacher. I live alone. That was my first purchase of a house or a unit, so excited to be in a little area like Wentworth Point.
Fantastic. And you're an undecided, are you?
I am undecided.
Really?
Because it's just a bit overwhelming. There's a lot.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in.
Hi, my name is Raphael. I live in Homebush West. I live alone. I'm undecided as well. I think both parties have equally right points and wrong points. So.
Hey, I'm Holly. I live in Wentworth Point as well. I work in tertiary education and I am on the fence, yes.
And why are you on the fence, Holly?
Arguably, both parties are more similar than they are different at the moment, have been for a while. So I'm just waiting to see who sparks something in me just before the election, I guess.
Jake, please, just a little hand portrait.
Forklift driver, work all over the place, different warehouses. I have a 5-year-old daughter from Marylands, and I'm pretty much an undecided voter too.
Hi everyone, I'm a property officer with State Government Department. So I work with the government's projects and acquiring properties for those projects. I live in Greystone, and voting-wise, I'm still undecided. So because there's lots of information available, and you know, as a layperson, you get confused. Okay, where to vote? So at this stage, I'm still deciding I don't know where I'm going to vote. I kind of like, you know, a normal person who does not have that kind of information, like, you know, that much information about politics and stuff.
My name is Serkan. I live in Sefton. 3 kids, 2 teenage girls, and a young boy, he actually really saves me there. I have a small business. We manufacture bags, paper bags. I am undecided with all the same reasons, I guess. They're both actually really very similar. Even in the state elections, we were just like, I didn't know who to go for, but I made up my mind on that day, and I went that way.
Hi everybody, I'm Sandy. I'm an at-home mum, live in Lidcombe. I have a husband and an 11-year-old son, turning 12, so he's heading to high school next year. So anything about education and the government, I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. Like with the state election, usually I voted one way, but I changed. So, yeah, this time around, so I'm not sure which way I'm going to go in the federal election.
You were going to go for...
Labor.
You were going to go Labor.
And I changed to Liberal.
On the day, or...?
On the day.
Why was that?
Just some of the promises that were made, I liked. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that just sort of grabbed me.
So they're the introductions, a little glimpse there of who we're talking about that make up this focus group. Now, there are 4 short segments from this week's focus group discussion that I want to show you. The first relates to the issue Scott Morrison likes to dismiss as being an obsession of the Canberra bubble. This, of course, is the leadership churn. What's interesting in this segment is how these voters clearly hold both major parties in disdain for how they've behaved over the past decade when it comes to turning through so many prime ministers. Let's take a look.
The whole change of leaders that we've had, which, to be honest, is just about embarrassing.
Yeah.
Because you can't...
Embarrassing, is it?
Yeah. People, you know, we're little bit of a joke worldwide. And they go, who's your Prime Minister now? You're like, hold on, we've got a new one.
Yeah, I need to check with Google. I'm not sure.
And their relatives overseas say, what is going on?
That is so true.
They're not in long enough to prove themselves and keep their promises.
And that's where I worry, like, are you actually thinking of the country? Or are you thinking, it's my turn to be the leader? I'm a kindergarten teacher. It's not always your turn. Like, it can't be your turn because you want it to be.
I voted for Kevin Rudd in 07, and when they swapped places and whatnot, I said, oh, what's going on? So I went the other way. And I said, oh, Liberals doing the same thing, what's going on? and that's one of the main reasons that I'm right on the border.
If you look at Labor's history, like Kevin Rudd was the we chose back in 07. He seems to have all the hype. Yeah. And then Julie Gillard kicked him out. And then Kevin Rudd kicked her out. And then, so that's Labor's history. And then when Liberal came in, Tony Abbott came in. And it seems like out of 10 years, we got 5 different leaders from both parties. So in terms of the trustworthiness, how can we trust them when they can't even manage themselves?
In Howard days, he was there for like 8 years or something.
Yeah, there's stability.
A long consistency. 11 years, yeah. 11 years, was it?
So there's a certain feeling that they were the good times, were they?
Yeah. Yeah. Looking back on it, I don't think we've had a leader, like a true leader, in a position of power since Howard.
Well, there you go. It might explain why John Howard is so often rolled out in as many marginal seats as the Liberal Party can get him to. Now to the second segment we want to show you. What are the big issues for these voters in the campaign? We've seen in the campaign a lot of debate in the first couple of weeks about, well, cost of Labor's climate plans, the cost of the Coalition's tax cuts, wages, and who's going to see an increase in wages, health as well. What do these voters, though, care most about? Let's take a look.
Climate policy is going to be a big thing for me. This country, compared to a lot of other countries, is pretty behind when it comes to climate change, anything. Like we had, 11-year-old kids protesting in Melbourne. They took the day off school. Did you guys see that? That was so impressive. And to see like kids, in primary school getting their shit together, getting it together better than our leaders can was pretty impressive and also pretty disgraceful at the same time. One
of the biggest issues at this federal election is to do with childcare.
Right. Yeah.
So childcare and affordability, because it's just from my family's experiences. My wife has to give up her job just because that. In order to put my child in childcare, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And right. I mean, both parties are talking this, talking that, but nothing. It seems like none of them are giving the right choice for me.
I was unemployed just before even getting a job, and you got Labor offers, say, the lower income people a lot more than, say, Liberal would. Liberal offers, I find the businesses a lot more than they do the smaller people. Labor promises all this great stuff for the lower income people, but does that really play out well for the future for Australia? If we're paying all the money to the lower income, people, then the businesses aren't thriving. Whereas Liberal comes in, they pay the businesses, they thrive, Australia booms. But when you're in that lower income stage, it's hard to see that because you're struggling with money, you're struggling with, everything. So you need that money.
Well, we're talking about lower income earners here and struggling.
That's
and
it.
The cost of living, especially here in Sydney, is going up. It's not going down, that's for sure.
Well, I've got the Barnaby Joy thing with the 80 million or whatever it was he bought for water.
And what's your understanding of that, Sandy? Can you
I think
help?
that's a bit underhanded.
Just for this, the teeny tiny accident, I work full time and I don't have a private health cover. And I ended up waiting in the public hospital for weeks. And then the day they put me on the surgery, and they called me an hour earlier, oh, we got a few emergency cases, so we have to cancel your surgery. So we'll give you a call to schedule it next. And it obviously disrupted my whole routine.
Who's telling you a better story on healthcare?
At this stage, not too sure, obviously undecided, but I think Labor, maybe, they will be doing more for community, like hospitals and education, all this kind of stuff.
Which is like traditionally their thing, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. That's what you think. Labor is, you know, they should be working for the community, you know, more.
Do we believe that?
I don't.
Just putting it out there, I don't know.
Well, past experiences say, you know, look at when Rudd was in place and all that, Australia was in debt. How much were we in the red for? Liberal came in, we're starting to get out of the red.
Yeah, but
So
Rudd
that's happened every time when Labor's been in power. You look at the whole history, 10, 20 years of Labor and Liberal. Every time Labor's been in, we go in the red. Every time Liberal's in, we start getting out of the red.
True, John
But then
Howard.
there's people like us, you know, that need the money, so come on Labor, and then bang, we go in the red again.
So, action on climate change, childcare, health, a big issue, and budget management at the end there as well. A mixture there of issues of national significance, like the budget and climate change, but also issues that directly affect an individual. Childcare costs, access to healthcare. Interesting too that $80 million water buyback under Barnaby Joyce's watch resonated with at least one voter. We're going to talk more about that shortly. What about the campaign ads the two sides have been rolling out? The attack ads, do they actually work? Let's find out.
First, the Liberals cut $700 million from hospitals and cut $14 billion from schools. Now we find out keeping your wages low is a deliberate part of their plan. Listen for yourself.
The wages aren't moving, are they?
This is an incredibly important point. That is a deliberate design feature of our economic architecture.
The Liberals deliberately keep wages low. The Liberals. Only for the top end of town.
Labor's billions of dollars in higher taxes will impact everyone. Their retiree tax will take money from those who've worked hard to save. Their family business and housing taxes would take money away from small business and families. And who will be left to pick up the bill from Labor's spending spree? That's right, a generation of young Australians. Labor, it's the bill Australia can't afford.
I get really annoyed with ads like that. Like, if I was going for a job interview and I found out who the other candidates were and I went in and when they said, why do you want this job? And I said, well, because all of these guys are crap for this reason, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't get the job. You know, like, it's just
Sabotage.
it's so illogical when you've got the chance to stand up and talk about why we should vote for you and, like, why you would do good and serve the people well. You take it as a chance to slam the other party. Like, it's just, it's child's play. It's pathetic and it's embarrassing.
The Liberals are saying what?
We're going to pay more tax.
Right. Do we believe that general message?
Yes.
Over the years, yes.
We do.
You look at it.
We do generally believe that now, do we?
But higher tax doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Right. Okay.
So we see, like, I mean, in some other countries like France, they pay like 50% tax, but they get a lot of free stuff.
Okay.
They benefit.
Yeah, more benefit of free stuff.
One party just makes an ad and just blames everything on the other party.
It doesn't benefit us. It's just saying that, oh, the other party is doing worse than us, so vote for us.
A lot of the lower income earners would be thinking, I want more money and this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We're not top end people. You know, I come from the suburbs, so it's pretty much a lot of those people are going to be thinking, hey, stuff them, we want, you know, better.
This is exactly the problem with the lack of education around politics in this country. It's like they do it on purpose so that they can throw this crap at us.
I've worked at various sites across New South Wales, and the lunchtime, you know, gossip is usually, like she just said, it's uneducated and it's more, oh, he said this on the news or he said that and look at this promise and what are we getting out of it? It's, so seeing an ad like that would make them all go, oh, boys, did you see that? Stuff them, let's vote for them.
Right. So it does. It is going to work. It is going to work with that
mindset,
part of the mindset, that part of the community.
Pretty much, I can see it working.
Well, the Stop the Boats worked, that slogan.
Yeah.
Stop the boats. Bam, everyone voted. You know.
So they may not like the attack ads, but they work. Final piece to show you, what do these voters think about some of the big issues, jobs and cost of living? Let's take a look.
I used to work as a contractor. And then I got the permanent position where I was working as. But what happened, because as a contractor, you get more pay as compared to the permanent employees. So that's what happened in my case also. My pay got down by $600 per month. And I recently bought a house with my brother because on a single income, it's really hard to afford to buy something here.
Jobs, wage and cost of living.
That's right. That's kind of a triangle.
It's a triangle, right? Is one of the parties or other going to be better at at this thing? I suppose it's creating more jobs.
I think stability in jobs is an issue. Like they want to cut the weekend rates and things like that. That really hurts some people in the hospitality industry in particular. Some of my friends, you know, they're always complaining about that.
I think Liberal seems to be welcoming more foreign workers to come in and work in Australia rather than Labor.
Right.
That's my thinking anyway.
That's your impression?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So in your case, you're thinking, right,
so
Liberals are welcoming more foreign workers, and maybe that's a good thing because of the technical skills that
maybe it's a bad thing for me because I might not have a job.
And maybe it's a bad thing because you might not have a job, so it's pulling you both ways.
I've been in a situation of being on the dole, being without a job, and you're getting, what, $400 a fortnight. You can't live off that. It's ridiculous. When, say, I've had it in the past with Labor, I've been unemployed when Labor was in power. Yeah, your money goes up to $500 a fortnight, you know, it goes up, you get bonuses, this and that. So you're thinking, yeah, awesome, great. You don't have to report much, you don't have to do anything, you're getting your dole check, awesome. You know, now Liberals in place, you've got to report, you've got to do this, you've got to do all this job search. If you don't do that, we're cutting you off. And it gets you out there, so it gets you looking for jobs, and finally you get a job. So you can't sit at home just getting your paycheck, you know, you've got to actually get out there and do something.
What about this one, healthcare, which I suppose could cover, well, it could cover hospitals.
Medicare, nurses.
You could cover having nurses, could cover Medicare, could it cover private healthcare?
Here's the funny thing with private insurance. None of the big parties are talking about reducing the price of private health insurance.
No.
But every year, private health insurance are increasing by, you know...
It's just ridiculous.
Exactly.
It's skyrocketing.
Yeah, that's in terms of private health insurance, none of the big parties are swaying me towards one or the other.
What about this one, climate?
I live close to the rail lines in Sefton, and every day, maybe 2 or 3 times, I see coal moving to.
Right.
You know, and if 25 million in Australia, people. You know, how much are we going to affect the world with our coal rather than exporting to other countries, and they just use it and use it. I've been to China and you know, it's very polluted.
There is a commitment from the Labor Party to have by 2030, 50% of all cars are electric vehicles. I mean, that's leadership. I think that's, you know, whereas Liberal are not saying, or not counter saying anything about it. They seem to be protecting their own, to my assumption, they seem to be protecting their own coal industry interests.
Now, depending on where you sit politically, you might be watching this thinking, oh, that one was definitely a Labor voter, that one was definitely a Liberal voter. But a reminder, these are undecided voters. They may be leaning one way or the other, but as you heard them say, they haven't made up their mind finally. It probably reflects where millions of voters are right now. What we're trying to do is give you a sense of the sort of voters the major parties are either trying to lock in or win over from the other side. How these voters are seeing this campaign, particularly in a marginal seat like Reid. After the break, we'll talk to the man you saw there moderating this discussion, Jerry Barone. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. We were just seeing before the break the first of our focus groups that we'll be bringing you for the remaining weeks of this campaign. We've commissioned YouGov Galaxy to do these for us, and you might have seen the man in the middle moderating all of this, Jerry Barone, who joins me now. Jerry, thanks very much for joining me, and really interesting to watch this first discussion with this group of 8 from the seat of Reid. Perhaps you can set the scene for us. Tell us, why are focus groups so heavily used by the political parties, what are they trying to achieve?
Well, I think they're used so heavily by the parties because they're trying to get under the skin of how people really feel about issues. You can look at the various polls and they give you a guide, but it's how people feel that will sway them on the day. And here, I think these are really interesting groups because these people, I mean, having talked to them, they are genuine. They're very genuine about their thinking about the election, and they're genuinely uncommitted. They are available. I remember one.
This is the thing. I mean, you listen to some of the comments. Sorry, you listen to some of the comments, and you think, oh well, he's obviously leaning that way, or she's obviously leaning that way. You spend a lot longer with them. The point is, they're not locked in yet. Absolutely. And I tried to make all 8 of them give me a leaning. I said, if you had to vote tonight, they're not so, you know, and just after Easter, which would you go? 7 of them gave me a leaning, but I remember one. She's a stay-at-home mum, and she said, look, I'll give you a leaning, it's this way. And then she said, but it's only just I'm giving you right.
that. And I think you saw that, that fellow, I think it's a forklift driver, he just wouldn't give, he just said, I am uncommitted.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And the issues they're talking about are interesting as well. Some of them are clearly coming through the campaign, but others, I thought, like the cost of childcare, the cost of private health insurance. We haven't heard the 2 leaders talk much about this yet. What struck you in terms of the issues they want addressed?
Well, I suppose in the whole discussion, it was economic issues that were top of mind. And you do get the feeling that people are feeling cost of living pressures. But on top of that, it's jobs. It's jobs and unemployment. I think they feel the pressures, but they think, gee, but so long as there's enough jobs to go wrong, as long as employment's strong, I'm going to be relatively okay. So I know it's maybe a cliche, but the running of the economy and the subcomponent parts is just super important. They take it seriously.
On the leadership churn that we've seen for the last decade, they were both, look, they were all... well, embarrassed was one of the words that came through there, disappointed. But is this going to particularly hurt the Liberals at this election, or did you sense it was a bit of a pox on both your houses?
Absolutely a pox on both your houses. And as soon as I mentioned the word, as soon as we brought it up in the group, said, well, which party or leader do you trust more? There's just open laughter. And people just said, we are a joke. I said, what do you mean? Said, we are a joke internationally even. So it is a little bit of pox on both your houses. In retrospect, you think, gee, the Liberals had a great opportunity after the Labor churning, but the punters, those voters, think, well, you've both done it, so we can't trust either of you. And they're very, I suppose it is disillusioning conclusion, and they said as much, is that the leader doesn't count, they're just waiting for a turn. Everybody's just waiting for their turn, like little kids in a primary school who want a turn at the sweets.
That's right, the kindergarten teacher made that point. It was a terrific one.
It was.
Look, final one here. On the campaign ads, you know, you showed them a couple of the attack ads both sides are using. They don't like attack ads. They don't like the negativity, obviously, but they seem to agree that they work.
Well, I think they've been educated into... they've been educated into that. Look, we showed the low wages attack ad. You know, the Labor attacking the Liberals. We showed the high taxes, Liberals attacking Labor. Our voters said, yeah, those things may be largely true, but they weren't very convinced. I didn't think they were actually particularly impactful. They got the message over, but there was a sense in which they're almost partly immune to advertising because the trust and credibility is so low. It'd be very interesting to see someone come out with a with a straight positive message, but
Positive, heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid, heaven. And I did say, well, get ready for plenty more negative, and again they just laughed. So,
exactly.
But
exactly.
I'm really interested to see how they'll go in the next few weeks, actually.
Yeah, well, and you bring the same group back over the coming weeks, so it's going to be really interesting, fascinating to hear in this first week. Look forward to talking to you next week after you've had a further chat with them. Jerry, appreciate that. We'll catch up then.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break right now. We've got a lot more coming up. If you're watching on Sky News on Win, you've got some Fox Sports News coming up next for you. If you're watching on Foxtel, we'll be right back.